Okay. I think this time it's working and we are on Facebook and YouTube, hopefully. So if you're joining us, be sure to let us know so that we know where we are because we tried this ago and it didn't put us on Facebook. So um, we're specifically looking for people on Facebook to say hi and let us know that you can see us and you can hear us because this is Friday with Fran and I am Shelly and this is Fran. I was like, which way is it going to make me point? And I was wrong. So, um, and we just get together as much as we can. That's because we were late, Mom. Sorry. Um,
I'm
and
glad you found us.
talk about things related to special education. I am a former special education teacher, now a um, author, an IEP coach, a podcast host, a speaker, an advocate, just doing all things related to special education. And Fran, what are you doing today? What is your why are you
Today, what am I
not
doing?
not today? See, I can't talk. I'm
Oh,
all flustered now. Why do
um,
you get to talk about all of these things? What's your expertise?
life, life experiences. Because I happen to have a couple of kiddos who have their own unique challenges, and then a little over this many, all the calendars ago, I was uh, blessed to have my own challenges.
Yeah. Oh, you are blessed to have your own challenges. I don't know that I've heard you say that before.
I probably haven't but I've been doing a lot of thought on where I am and why am I where I am.
Aha. Okay. Doing some uh, in-depth, deep diving. I'm trying to come up with my words and I can't. So, so what are we going to talk about today?
Well, I what came to mind for me, and I thought we could run with it in many different avenues, so that's why I suggested it, was adaptations,
Okay.
adaptability. Would you like to know why I came up with it today?
Of course.
Okay. Well, I have, as you can see on my hands, adaptations, but I have many other adaptations. And one of them is my Becker stance control CAFO, which is my leg
Did you
brace.
just speak a foreign language? Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's my leg brace, otherwise known as Lorenzo, my leg. And Lorenzo was giving me problems this morning, and all of the lining in the heel plate had peeled away, and so I was up against the brace, the hard material of the brace. And I've been trying really, really hard to not be a bum on my my recliner and to actually get out and exercise. But where we live, and pretty much the entire United States, is like in this record heat waves.
Mhm.
And so in order to do that, I've been getting up. Well, I get up early anyway, but I've been going out early-ish in the morning and walking. And so I went and tried.
Okay.
You can answer and just come back. Don't forget to come back.
Well, if it's the uncle that I'm thinking of, it's a 3 hour. It's a this many times around the clock conversation.
Oh, okay. Well, it was nice knowing you while you were here. Um, so I went on this 2.5 mile jaunt this morning, and
Wow.
it the padding had pulled away, but I didn't want to give up my walking, so I kept walking. So in the process, I've bruised my heel now. But
Yeah.
it made me think about adaptations and how they're so good when they work, and when they're not working, how bad they are. And it brought me to thinking about all kinds of adaptations we have in life, and not just the mechanical physical ones, but the verbal ones, the words, the other things as well, if that makes sense. So I didn't mean to run away with it, but that's kind of what got me thinking about it.
No, that's good. I'm glad you explained it. So it's interesting that you said adaptations of words. I would like you to explain what you mean by that.
Okay, so we think of the spoken language, right? And that's how most of us communicate.
Hi, Uncle.
And that's how
Right. In
most of us
spoken words, we
communicate.
communicate. Yes.
Right. I mean, we also, as we've both done through laughter and through emotions, but there's other adaptations in light with words.
Right.
People communicate with their hands with sign language.
Yes.
Words are spoken through boards, tech boards.
Mhm.
I'm having a hard time with words too today, apparently. But you know what I'm talking about? Chat boards.
Right. Yeah. Augmentative and assistive technology
Yeah,
devices,
augmentative
communication
devices.
devices.
And
Yeah.
it doesn't help that my cat is walking in front of me back and forth.
Oh, well, she just wants to say hi. Hi, Emmy.
She waves her
Alex,
paw.
glad you could find us too. Sorry, it was my fault. I'm just going to leave it at that.
It just happened. I don't know if it was a fault. So anyway, we're here. We're all here together. Thank you.
Yes. Yes.
So that's where I was going with the words thing. And also people communicate in different languages rather than
Okay.
just English. So that's an adaptation as well.
Okay. Can I tell you what I was thinking when you said adaptations of language or words?
Sure.
That, yes, there are different languages, sign language, all the European languages, the South American languages, um, but also just the words, even the words that are similar from one country to another or one language to another.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when we lived in England, and we joke that it took us a while to learn the language, but there was a learning curve, definitely,
Uh-huh.
because
So did you
a
put
lot
it in the boot?
of sometimes I had to load things into the boot, yes,
Uh-huh.
and sometimes we took the uh, oh, now it just escaped me, the lorry, um, if we needed to haul something, or um, we what is it? We knocked up our neighbors. So, yeah, there definitely was a bit of a learning curve. But the funny thing to me was when I went to Scotland. One time I took the train, and when I got off the train, and the train station was a person sitting with a sign, and on his sign it said, "English spoken, American understood." And I mean, both places speak English, but there are definitely adaptations of our words.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And even if you study the Bible, the a lot of the words that are put into the Bible have multiple meanings. And so the one that was the closest meaning in English is the one that is often used, although the original might have had 4 different things or 3 different things, B or C or D different things
Mm-hmm.
that
Yeah.
meant that we're using one word to describe. So, and then we've adapted our language to certain words people don't like that used to be used, and so we've taken some of those words out, or we try to take those words out. And so that I was kind of thinking along those lines when you said adaptations of words.
Okay. Isn't that interesting how you and I were going and we hear the same thing, but we went totally opposite directions? And how often does a conversation go haywire because we're bringing our own bias into it?
Mm-hmm. Yep. And this is something that I speak about very often, almost at every IEP meeting that I attend, that we need to clearly discuss things and clearly define the phrases and the words that we use for accommodations, or that we're putting in there as the goal, or how the goal will be met, or who's going to give the goal, who's going to not give it, but who's going to administer the assessment for the goal. Because we use words and we all think we know what the word means, and we have, I think, a general understanding of words, but then how that actually fleshes out might be thought of differently in our heads. And it's not, and I tell people at these meetings, it's not that anybody at this meeting has the right way to do it or the wrong way to do something, but in order for all of us to be on the same page, we need to know what each of us is thinking when we say a particular accommodation or writing out a particular goal or whatever.
That brings me to this morning. My parents were going shopping and they'd asked me if I needed anything picked up. So I sent them a list. And I had forgotten to have somebody change something on the list so that it made sense to them. And so they got this list and it said G Honeycrisp apples. And my mom was like, I don't know what you want here. Do you want a bag? No, I don't like them in the bag. They're really bruised. I need G of them. Well, I don't know what that means.
Oh, right.
And I was like, it means, like A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And she goes, I'm sorry. I'm really trying to understand, but I don't understand. I said, let me text Allie and have her call you so that she can tell you what I need. So I needed my daughter to call my mom to communicate what I had written, because what I have adapted for counting was not communicating clearly to my mom. And so it required another person to get the communication across.
Yep. And you needed an interpreter. Which, I mean, I think that's, again, if we talk about the different languages, I would need an interpreter for every other language but English if somebody wanted to speak to me in some other language, or if I had to read materials in some other language. And I think that's what a lot of people need often, but they don't want to call it that or admit that they need that. And I don't see that as necessarily a negative thing.
Sometimes it's just, from my perspective, it's a nuisance to have to ask somebody to interpret it. And so I've gotten, my friend calls it the death nod. And people will be talking, I'm like, because if it's not important to me, or if I don't deem it important enough to break into the conversation to go, I have no idea what you're talking about, I just go, And
yeah, you've done that to me a couple of times, and then I realize what you're doing, and I'm like, oh, you're not understanding me, are you? You're like,
but you were in the middle of a conversation, and it interrupts the flow when you have to ask for an interpretation. So sometimes it's easier just to let it go and come back to it, or sometimes it works it out so that you understand what was being said enough that you get the gist of it. And sometimes you've forgotten by that point and you just moved on.
Yeah, but and I say yeah, but I guess I understand if it's not important, and that's for you to determine if it's important for you or not to know that information. I think about, in a meeting though, or in a situation, like where you have to understand, or at least maybe if you don't understand the whole number concept, you understand what they're asking of you, and vice versa. Like the G honey apples. Your mom needed to know that you wanted 7, which is what the number that it
That's a number.
correlates
Okay.
to the letter G. If I just did my counting correctly, at least. And so, yeah, that was important that you used an interpreter. And you mentioned earlier, and I said it too, but you mentioned it like people talk with their hands, and then you defined that or named that as sign language. But I talk with my hands all the time. It's not sign language.
True. And sign language is actually more than hands, it's the entire body speaking.
Right.
I don't want to misrepresent that. Sorry about that.
But even that, I mean, there's differences within that, because you have American Sign Language, and then you have, I think there's A or B other kinds of sign language, and then you have the slang, which I call it the slang, which is when people develop their own. It's not a full language, but it's enough, between a couple people that they can just make a motion with their hands, and other people know what they're saying.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I just refer to that as slang because it's kind of an adaptation, I guess, of.
Right. That made me think of counting. How do you count A?
1.
No, show me.
Oh. Yeah.
And that's a European thing. I'm not sure if it translates to Latin American as well.
Pig Latin is another, adaptation.
Yeah.
Of spoken words. Yeah, and that's, again, I think that's kind of a slang. I don't know that that's an official language. But yeah.
So yeah.
And something that Alex said that I put up on the screen, and I had kind of, when you said that you wanted to talk about adapting or adaptations, I don't think I read it. I'm actually going to look back and see if those were truly the words that you said, because I don't think I read the text with the words adaptations. You did. I read it as accommodations, or at least I don't know if I read it that way, but that's how my brain interpreted it.
Can you go ahead and put up what was it Alex said again?
When I heard adaptations, I thought actual physical things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you thought accommodations. Do you have your thing?
I do. I have to reshare it though, because we had to step out and come back in. So, all right. So here it is. So what do you think that are watching with us right now? How are these items alike? And it takes a second or two for their responses to come in.
That's fine. We can wait while we do that.
And so the reason that I have this slide is I actually give presentations. And I used this slide in that presentation. I almost told you what the title was, which would then give you the idea of what these all have in common. So I use this slide in my presentations and try to get, this is just a thinking activity. Okay, so Alex says, not sure. Just take a guess. They're devices to help someone to avoid steps. What about the chair? That's true. Some of them could be that. You've got a microwave. Maybe you guys can't see the pictures very well either. I don't know how big these are on your screens, but you've got a ramp next to steps, a door and a window, a chair, elevators, and a microwave.
Do you have anything else to go with this?
I was just going to do that. Let's see if this helps you figure out where I'm going with this concept. Or if it just confuses you even more.
Does it muddle the waters? So you put up crutches?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Thank you for describing that. What if I throw in this one? It's an artificial or a mechanical hand.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead and throw up some more.
This
Glasses.
one really, when I put this one up, the microwave is throwing me off. Well, what do you think everything is apart from the microwave? The ramp and the elevator, the microwave helps in a different way. Also, the chair helps you to rest. I don't know about the door and the window. Okay, and there's two more. So we have a lined piece of paper and then a pencil with an eraser on it. All of these are adaptations. All of these are accommodations. And I used this slide in a presentation about accommodations and modifications. Mm-hmm. So often we don't realize all of the things that are around us that have been modified from their original invention. The door and the window, there were homes without window curtains and without doors way in the beginning of time. And then eventually it was decided that we needed privacy and we needed security. And so we put curtains and we put doors, and we put doors with windows. The original doors, not all doors have windows in them. The elevator and the ramp, absolutely, they help get a person from one level to another level. The microwave, before we had microwaves, we only could cook on the stove. We had to take however long it took to cook on the stove. The lined paper, just the invention of paper at all. See, that's why
I was laughing. I'm sorry.
Yeah. You were trying to be more specific. That's why I was wanting you to to give me your thoughts, because you probably, I was thinking, were along the right path. This is making my brain hurt. This is my day of rest. But, glasses. How many of us on a regular basis wear glasses? And if you're talking about providing accommodations, whether that is within a school system or an employment setting, it's to provide access to something. Okay, so the ramp and the elevator provide access to the second level. Escalators, same thing. The glasses, all of us with my glasses, I can now see what I am putting on the screen. If I didn't have my glasses on, I wouldn't know what I was putting up there, because it would be I would know, but it would be very fuzzy. And so there's just, almost everywhere we look, things have been adapted. The chair, yeah, absolutely. A chair with a back on it. It's to rest your back. Not all chairs have backs on them. It's a safety thing. If you put a little child on that chair, this one's got kind of a big opening in the back. The little child could go through the back. So you have other chairs that are adapted with straps or with full backing without any openings. So, you can look, I look around my house and, so many things have been adapted from the original to make it more accessible for everybody. And so these are the kinds of things that I was thinking about when I read adaptations or adapting. And as you can see, most of these things on here are not just helpful to one group of people. They're helpful to everybody. It's not just a person in a wheelchair who uses a ramp, but that's what the original intention was. The curb cutout, same thing for people in wheelchairs. But
and now people with strollers even use them.
Strollers, walkers, difficulty lifting legs for, they could walk, but it's harder for them to lift their leg for whatever reason. There's so many things. So I'm going to take that out now. So that's kind of where my brain went. And I think that's because of being in the school setting for so long and thinking accommodations and modifications. So yeah. Sorry that I made your brain hurt, Mom.
I was thinking as you were going through that, I took a drink, and then I don't know if you can see the straw. It's a metal straw. And I know a lot of people use metal straws for the environment instead of plastic. But it's also good for someone that needs it to drink, but they clench their jaw so that they can still use the straw and it doesn't collapse and they can get liquid.
Yep. Yeah. The cup that you have with the lid on it, that's an adaptation.
Right.
A lot of cups don't have lids on them.
All my cups have lids on them. Otherwise, they end up on the ground because I drop them because my hand randomly lets go.
Yeah. Or cups with handles or cups without handles. There's just, things are different, and that's okay.
Well, think about a coffee mug even with the handle. They weren't originally made with handles, but people probably got tired of burning their hands so that they put a handle on there.
And even the material that they're made out of.
Yep. So inventions are made out of necessity, and adaptations, I believe, are as well.
I would agree with that.
So, Alex, you were thinking that adaptations was more physical. What kind of ones were you thinking of? Because if I think about it, I have lots of physical adaptations, but I also have other that aren't physical, I guess. But I'm not sure how to word them to make them seem not physical. Like my language translations.
Yeah. That's your words. Almost everything can be adapted to meet a person's needs. Absolutely. And that's, so many of the people on #NoLimits have adapted things in order to have a feeling of purpose, to develop jobs, to make jobs easier for their loved one or themselves.
Unfortunately, adaptations are very expensive in the disability world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would, and I wish I could make that better, because there's enough that you have to deal with already to then have to try to figure out how am I going to afford this adaptation that I need. Some adaptations are for convenience, and some that are a convenience for one group are a need to another group, like the ramps or the elevators.
Right.
Yeah, it changing tables that are actual tables in
Adult
public
sized.
restrooms.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There's
Yep.
a state that's made that a law. I
Arizona.
believe I was going to say Arizona, but yeah.
Yep. That became a law because of a friend of mine whose daughter was getting bigger and used a wheelchair to get around. And whenever they would go someplace, it was, that they would have to either not go for long periods of time because they had nowhere to change her, or they would have to take her out to their vehicle or change her on the floor of the bathroom. Because a toddler table, or I don't know if you can call it a table, but the little portion that you pull down or that a lot of bathrooms have in them, was not big enough. And it was too high for my friend because she's a shorter person. And so to lift her 10, 12, 13-year-old up onto that thing was impossible. And so she and a group of moms, I think it was like 90 days, which is 3 C calendars, which is unheard of, got a law passed that any new public facilities have to have the bigger changing table areas.
That's awesome.
And there's another one in the UK that's doing very similar, another type of organization. And I think the one in Arizona, the organization, they named themselves Dignified Changes. And the one in the UK, I just think, is just Changing Places, is what they call themselves.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But yeah.
Emmy, you're on the way.
They can be expensive, Alex says, but I was just thinking of simple things of putting things in certain places to help. Can you allow to make that worldwide? Yeah. Yep. In airports, especially.
Yeah. I know in some places you can go use a first aid station to change.
Oh, okay.
But it's not convenient and it's not set up as a bathroom, so
right.
There's a lot of loss of dignity sometimes.
Mm-hmm. And as you said before, adaptations come out of a need, and it's oftentimes the person or the loved one of a person who has the need who works to get the adaptation. And then, their focus is, oh, well, if my loved one or I need this, maybe there's more people who would need this.
Mm-hmm.
But it starts out because one person said, this needs to happen.
But I have to be honest here. As you're saying, it's if it's a loved one or something. After a while, sometimes you get really tired of fighting. Always having to fight for your loved one's rights, your loved one's needs. Sometimes it can be really heavy.
I can imagine.
When others don't have to fight for the basic rights of their loved one. I just had to share that.
Alex is going deep now. Adaptation for self as opposed to meeting everyone's needs. Yep.
Mm. So
yeah, I imagine, it's not. I have advocated for my students and for some around me, but it's not an every minute of every day type of advocacy. And I can only imagine that, especially once you're talking years of doing that. And I think you must at some point just think, why doesn't anybody else see this need?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and I'm not going to speak for other people, but for myself, it's because we don't have to see that need.
If it's not in your front and center, like I know this doesn't exactly apply, but when COVID happened and we all got locked out of seeing our loved ones, it was in our faces and we had to attend to it.
Mm-hmm.
We couldn't let it ever happen again. So it became an overarching need. It's something we couldn't set aside. But until that had happened, that never seemed to matter, that passing legislation. But once it was in our face, then we were like, oh, we can't let it happen again.
Right. Yeah.
So,
and that's part of the issue too, is, we don't realize how many people are affected by certain things until a larger portion of people are affected or have to deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that the average human sits around wherever they are in the world going, well, I'm not gonna provide whatever, because they've not thought about the fact that, oh, hey, if this was going on, this would be helpful to, or if this tool was available, or if this device, or if this thought process. I mean, I have learned and constantly learn so much from the people that I talk to on #NoLimits, and as I've immersed myself more into advocacy and working with people who have all kinds of different abilities. And then as I talk to people still outside those communities, and they don't have the same knowledge that I have, and they'll make a comment, and I think, how can you not know that? And I'm like, oh wait, okay, it wasn't all that long ago that I wasn't aware of this issue, or I wasn't aware of that line of thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Because like doing the bathroom changes, I never thought about anybody over the age of, toddler age needing to be changed.
And I just changed my son on the floor because I had to. So that's what we did.
Yep. And I think sometimes people give answers without really thinking about the full impact of what they're saying. I've had people that I've said stuff about, like the bigger changing tables. And I've explained it, and well, why don't they just hold it? Well, not everybody has that ability to, and if you're traveling, if you're on an airplane and you're going from, one side of the country to the other side, or even the normal amount of time that you might be able to hold something has elapsed because of how long of the travel. And so, I mean, it's just a matter of looking at things and going, oh, that's why. And I think most people, if you give them that opportunity and you talk with them, they tend to start thinking differently. I'm not going to say that it changes their mind immediately.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. If, like you said, if it's not in your face or your problem, you're not aware of the need. And so it's important, I think, again, kind of why I do #NoLimits, and why I think part of why we do this is to bring that
awareness,
different way of thinking.
Yeah. And then I was just looking at, what Alex had said about how we adapt for ourselves, our individual needs. And sometimes adapting for our individual needs like, just needing to hold something on the right side or something, makes us
I
then
missed that.
aware of makes other people aware of, or makes us aware of other people maybe having that need as well,
Hmm.
and then ignites the advocacy within us.
Yep. It's like what I say about behaviors. Whatever behavior you pay attention to the most, the more of that behavior you're going to see. So it's the same thing. You start realizing, oh, I'm pulling things over to my right side, and now I notice that, you know, the guy at the grocery store appears to be doing the same thing. Or, um, like when my mom got her last car, and I thought, well, that's a really odd and unusual color. Like, I don't see cars that color. Now I see them all over the place. And I'm like, okay, I just proved my own theory to myself. The more that you tell your brain to pay attention to something, or the more your brain thinks that you pay attention to something, the more of that it puts into the forefront of your, because we take in so much information every second of every day that our brain naturally weeds things out that it doesn't think we
Hmm.
need or want, and it puts them in categories, and or just completely dismisses them.
Like, I always thought that I was um, aware of people with mobility issues until I became somebody living it.
Mm.
And then I realized I maybe occasionally thought of it, but I was not focused on it. It was filtered out, as you were talking about. Like today in my walk, my town sidewalks, some are really, really good and some are really, really bad. And so it's easier for me to walk along the side of the road where people normally park, but early in the morning, no one's parked there. So it works out really well. But it puts you in closer proximity to people driving down the road as well. So it's probably not the wisest choice, but it's easier for me to walk because I'm not having to constantly look at the ground and the dips and the cracks and the tree roots and all that kind of stuff as I'm walking. And I'm more able to focus on walking in a steady gait and to get my leg to move forward instead, because I can only focus on so many things. And if I'm focusing on that, then my leg tends to drag. And so if I'm focusing on my leg, I can't focus on the road as much. So I have to choose the easier path to walk. But would I have realized that prior to my stroke? No. I would have said, "Oh, we have sidewalks. How wonderful. Oh, we have slope sidewalks. That's really great. Did you know most of our slope sidewalks end in a really rugged connection to the road?" And so it's like a big dip. And so
Oh,
it's not as smooth, and especially when I'm in my wheelchair and I hit them, it's kind of
right.
crazy. But if since it wasn't in my face prior, I would not have known that. But now I know it. And so I've taken to taking pictures of certain sidewalks, and then I email them into the administrator so that they're aware. Hey, these sidewalks really stink. Did you know that?
Hmm. Yeah, we may not see why someone needs certain adaptations, and we shouldn't judge them for those needs and those adaptations.
Right.
And yeah, you
That's
were
really good,
talking
Alex.
about the sidewalks and going into the street, and that made me think about. This was just an aha moment for me recently, where, and I haven't changed that slide, but in that slide that I showed you, it has a ramp and it has a straight incline. But recently, somebody brought it to my attention. That's not really very accommodating if you're in a
No, because it
wheelchair.
doesn't because it doesn't have a landing.
Yeah. And so when you think about that, I mean, if you are a person who's not in a wheelchair, go in a wheelchair and try to go up a ramp. It's not easy. because if you stop going forward, guess what happens? You either got to stop your wheels or you start going backwards. And, you know, to not have like a little ramp and then a flat and then a, you know, to get that, okay, I mean, people who go up steps sometimes take a break, but you can't take a break if you're in a wheelchair and you're going up a straight ramp. And I never thought about that until I saw that different ramp recently, and I went, oh, duh. And it does. To me, a lot of those things do feel like a duh moment, but unless I sit and think about it, I'm not going to recognize it.
Mm-hmm.
So you knew where I was going with the straight incline of the ramp. Have you had experiences where you haven't been able to make it all the way up the ramp? Or, I mean, I can even think about...
Do you want to know how I've learned to accommodate ramps that don't have landings?
Yes, please.
I go up them backwards.
Okay. How does that help?
Because I can put my feet down on the downward slope, and I can push myself up and use my arms. When you're going up forwards, you can't use your legs.
Right.
And I can give myself a break when I'm going up backwards. But if it's like sorry, my cat is like all over today.
Okay.
If it's a long one, I don't go in the building because it's not worth hurting myself.
Oh, wow. Yeah. And I mean, I since I've seen the different ramps, and yeah, there's a ratio of how many inches you're supposed to go up on a ramp so it is not too steep or too hard to get up.
Yeah, high slope to something.
But I would be curious if that mathematical formula is for people in wheelchairs or people walking.
It's for an ADA ramp. So
yeah, but I'm saying, who developed that ratio?
Right. Yeah.
Like, you know, was it somebody who was sitting in a wheelchair trying to go up the ramp? Or was it somebody who was walking and said, this is the incline in percentage or grade or whatever you call that? But yeah, I mean, I've thought about the times when I've even tried to push someone in a wheelchair up some of the ramps. And that just makes me think how strong people in wheelchairs who aren't using motorized wheelchairs have to be to get themselves up some of these ramps. I mean, the upper body strength is tremendous.
It's probably why I ended up having shoulder surgery last year.
Quite likely. I could definitely see that.
I mean, not the only reason. Probably falling on it a gazillion times probably didn't help either. But still, anyway.
Yeah. I mean, it's more than one factor, but that factor didn't help.
Right. So, no, I think my hope when we brought up this topic was just to bring it, as your mom said, into mind's eye, into front and center of our day-to-day lives, of where we can help others make the necessary changes to equalize the playing field for everyone.
Mm-hmm. Maybe, yeah, I'm not sure that we can equalize it, but at least make it more accessible.
Yeah, at least bring people into the playing field.
Right.
Right.
Yep. Because I was even, as you were talking about taking your walk, I was thinking, well, why don't, instead of you, I wasn't thinking this, but I could hear other people say, well, why doesn't she just step down in the sections where it's bad, and then step back up in the sections where it's good. Why do you laugh? Why wouldn't that be a good?
Have you ever watched me take a step?
That's what I'm saying. Like somebody who
no.
doesn't know you or
And
doesn't
that's why I'm
understand.
laughing, because I can't take alternating steps like typical people. I take a step and then I take my bad leg and I heft it up onto the next step, and then I take a step and then I heft my leg. So that definitely would not work for me. That's why I stay on the road.
Right.
But you know what some people wouldn't even think about? In our town, we use chip and seal to do the roads, which is where they put oil down on the road, thick, gooey oil, and then they put rocks on it and they roll it. And that's how they do the roads. Do you know how hard that is to walk on?
I imagine it's pretty difficult.
So there's a road north and south of my house that runs the length of the town. Well, not the length of the town, part of the town. And this road to the north was chip and sealed all the calendars ago, and the road to the south was chip and sealed all the calendars ago. Okay. So it's not as smooth. So I always go to the other road because it's easier. But even when I'm done, the jarring of the rocks on my walker make it really difficult. But because we don't have sidewalks, or people don't take care of their sidewalks, and they have little grassy things growing up. So have you ever run into a door jam?
Yes.
You know, that goes across, and all of a sudden you abruptly stop. You weren't expecting that abruptly stop, and if you're carrying something, it tends to go flying. Well, that's what little grassy roots do in the sidewalk when you hit them. You abruptly stop and you jar yourself and you tend to fall. So those are all things that I never would have thought about having to make accommodations for and adaptations.
Well, and the other thing, as you were talking about things in the sidewalk, that I thought about was people leaving things in the middle of the sidewalk.
Oh yeah, basketball hoops.
Yeah. Basketball hoops, bicycles, roller skates, trash cans that are out for pickup on the day of pickup. Their cars. Dog poop. You know, I'm sure somebody's going, people leave their cars on the sidewalk. Well, the way some towns and some subdivisions are, driveways cut right through a sidewalk. And so, yeah, your car technically is in the sidewalk.
Yeah. Did you see what Alex did?
Yep. In a world where you can be anything, be kind to others and their adaptations. And, I get it. It's frustrating for those that don't think that way to be blamed because they don't think that way. And by blame, I mean that they're thought of as being unkind. And I think, a lot of people, I'm even thinking about like the car, that's across the sidewalk because they're parked in somebody's driveway. They're like, well, why do I, nobody uses this sidewalk? Or why do I have to walk an extra 5 feet to park on the street or to leave the sidewalk space open because, somebody else wants to use the sidewalk? That's not my problem. And I don't always know that people think that way, first of all. But I know that there are some that when it's brought to their attention, hey, if you could not park your car here or pull up or leave leave that space open, that would be really helpful to me. And so sometimes it is like a defense, like, oh, somebody just told me I did something wrong. And so I'm going to defend myself and say, well, I didn't do it wrong. That's your fault. Or not your fault, but that's your problem to deal with, not mine.
Right.
We have to catch ourselves, honestly, I think, and think about it. You're right, Alex. It's the awareness. And think about why are we responding that way?
Mm-hmm.
Why are we so prideful in that moment that we can't accept a little bit of critique? I don't even know if it's a critique, but a little bit of
Redirection.
I don't know. Redirection. Yeah.
I think it's that's a bigger societal issue.
Mm-hmm. We've become very much a me society. Whatever is best for me, and that goes both ways. You know, if you were walking down the sidewalk and there was a car there that was parked in somebody's driveway, yes, you are saying, well, this makes that much more difficult for me to go through here. Once in a while, it's okay. But if it's every day that you're trying to get through there, and then you go say something to the person whose car is always in that space, then, they're like, well, it's not my problem, it's your problem. And they, you're both thinking about yourself, but yours is truly a need, where that other person's is convenience or an ease of being able to not have to change themselves and think about how their actions affect others.
Right.
Have we gone deep enough?
I think so. I think we went pretty deep there.
This is phew, mercy. I don't know if I can dig myself back out of that.
Just as Alex said, being aware of those around us, and also, as Alex pointed out, also being aware of our own needs and how we can adapt and to make life go more smoothly for ourselves as well as those around us. It's okay.
Alex hasn't said it yet, but we need that balance. We need that balance of doing what's right for ourselves, as well as the greater good, and being able to look outside of ourselves and say, oh, I could change this and make things a little bit easier for somebody else, or, heavy. There it is. Heavy but informative. And yes, balance. Absolutely.
Thanks, Mom.
Yeah. And Mom says, yes, it was heavy, but it was very good and it was informative. So I think we've done our jobs today.
I think so.
And it's actually time to stop.
Is it?
Yep.
Just remember, you're never alone.
Yep. Even if you don't have Fran and I right there next to you, you're never alone. We are a comment away.
Yep.
So I think we'll see you next week. We haven't looked that far in our calendars. I don't know.
I don't know. I haven't looked at my calendar.
Yeah. All right. Have a great weekend, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Have a good weekend, Mom.
Bye.